During tough times, turbulent times, people often will actually reduce the wrong types of expenses. Part of it is because somehow fundamentally we've been trained, taught, and educated that if we eliminate things, there's more for us.
Let's put more money in your pocket, increase your financial IQ, and create more peace of mind, clarity, and certainty in your life. Welcome to Money Matters, a weekly segment of the Wealth Labs podcast where we tackle the money topics that matter.
But sometimes we eliminate the wrong expenses, which leads to a life of frustration, taking on way too much work, getting exhausted because we're spending so much time trying to save money that we don't make the money we could truly make. We're going to go through the 4 different types of expenses, and once you know these, you could differentiate them and therefore know which ones to decrease, which ones to manage, and the right one to increase up to a certain point. All right, that might not be something a lot of people think about, but usually when I use the word expense, people don't feel inspired. It's like a pit in the stomach, like it's something negative. But if we recontextualize that and we look at it from a different angle, the word expense means it's how we utilize our money. Your income is someone else's expense. By having an expense, it might free up our time to do something that makes us even more money, which is the definition of investing. So as we go through this, it's going to help you navigate the different economies. It's going to help you navigate the different seasons of your life when it comes to your finances. And I really think it can accelerate your wealth in a much safer way. All right, Tim. Tim, I think I hurt myself, or Tim absolutely Carden here with me, a money nerd extraordinaire. So the 4 types of expenses, we'll just begin with the first one.
Okay.
Destructive expenses. Let's give some examples of a destructive expense.
So a destructive expense is anything that's wasted money. So if you think about, the easy example of this is a gym membership. If I'm paying for a gym membership, but I never actually have the automatic doors of the gym open due to my presence, that's a destructive expense.
Right.
So,
Or if you go on a trip and you don't have the cash for it, so you put it on your credit card, you now come home from the trip with a loan but no asset to back it up or create that cash flow. So it's really an individual situation. Like, I don't have a gym membership anymore, but I spend so much money on gym equipment that it might be becoming a little bit destructive. I have to be mindful of that. I'm a little bit addicted to it.
It's wonderful
I have
for
4
us.
gyms. I don't own a gym as far as that I sell to other people. I just have a gym at my cabin, a gym here at the office, a gym at my home, and a gym in my garage.
And all of
I
us
should be in better shape, by the way, if this is the case.
All of us get to benefit from that because there is a gym here at the office now.
And it's true. There's parts of that gym that I've never used, like the climbing rope. I don't know how to do it. I'm just gonna come clean. So destructive expenses are, we're not utilizing it. We're not benefiting from it. Or heroin. I'm pretty sure that's always a destructive expense, right? So these are the things we want to eliminate. The second type of expense is a lifestyle expense. So let's give some examples there.
Lifestyle expenses are the favorite expense that we have, right? It's the things that we do to enjoy our life, to bring value to ourselves, our family, build memories that'll last forever.
But don't borrow to consume. Don't borrow money for a lifestyle expense because then it becomes destructive. Now, there's 2 caveats to this. One is, I kind of think of a home as more of a lifestyle expense than something that's an asset because it rarely produces cash flow. Now, we know people like Demi, who's one of the money nerds that I bring on, that she Airbnb'd her home, and then she eventually turned off cash flow from that to get a second home that was then what she Airbnb'd. But I went to Europe for 2 months, as you know, and when we went, I told my wife, I'm like, we should Airbnb the house or something, or VRBO it, or do some type of thing. She's like, I don't want people doing weird shit in my house when I'm not there. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I know your cousin is always want to know exactly what time we're coming home. It's not like he's doing the dishes. So, I just kind of look at it like it's not really an asset producing cash flow for most people. So, but if you borrow, at least there's an asset attached to it. Just be careful not to borrow everything that's available to you, to be sure that you're not putting yourself in a cash crunch because you're buying on payment versus purchase price, right? The second thing is a car. Some of you watching, listening, maybe don't have the money to just go pay cash for a car. And borrowing, that car might be essential. Maybe you want to do Uber or Lyft and you're going to make money doing that. So, or maybe it's just simply that's the only way that you can really make life work because there's not a good transit authority or something in your area. Well, you might borrow for that even though it's a depreciating asset. I would be even more calculated about that to consider that a lifestyle expense because it isn't going to be an asset that holds value typically. So otherwise, just pay cash for these lifestyle expenses. Don't need to feel guilty about it if you're paying yourself first and saving a certain amount off the top and then living off the rest and not borrowing to consume.
Absolutely, and that's the way that
Absolutely.
lifestyle expenses
Tim,
make the most
absolutely
sense. Is, as you mentioned, the house. I think they used to always call them an asset class, but think about our grandparents. How long did they own a house for, and how long did they live there?
They're pretty much forever.
Yeah, they'd buy a house.
They just cram people into one room, right? Like now we're like, we need to have a guest room.
And we're buying new houses all the time. We're trading them. We're not keeping them very long.
Right, it's a little different era that way.
And it's much harder to actually consider that an asset.
Like, look, I would even consider renting, but my wife feels like then we can't improve it. I'm like, yeah, but someone else has to do that instead of us. So I think it's more of a personal preference. Now, the third type of expense is a protective expense. And I wrote a book called What Would the Rockefellers Do? And in that book, I talk a lot about how the Rockefellers created certain protective expenses like asset protection, like estate planning, like the right types of insurances to transfer risk and to pass on wealth for generations. So those protective expenses become part of why they've been able to move wealth for 6 generations strong. Most of us are in store for major financial surprises. I would say 90% of those financial surprises can be addressed through protective expenses, having enough safety and liquidity, right? So you've got money set aside for the unexpected. I read an article that I think it's somewhere upwards of like 2/3 of Americans couldn't come up with $1,000 in 5 days. I mean, these are kind of scary things. We're here to make sure that you can be more responsible financially in a way that doesn't require you to live a miserly life forever. Because look, I tried that path in my 20s where we rented a crappy apartment even though we were making a good living, and I tried to save every last dollar. I didn't let my wife buy new clothes even though she was a teacher coming out of college. College girls don't always wear the same clothes as like 3rd grade teachers. Like, I was just a miser. It wasn't very fun to be around me, right? So I've had to find like a little bit different mindset here. And so it's like, yeah, lifestyle expenses are fine. Protective expenses are essential. We need to address those. But really the game changer is the 4th expense. I'll let you unveil it.
That's the productive expense, right?
Seems like an oxymoron, productive and expense, right?
Yeah, but it's the most valuable expense that we have. It's where we put $1 in and more than $1 comes back.
Right. So that could be hiring someone if you're a business owner that's awesome. That could be investing in marketing that produces something. It could be investing in infrastructure. It could be literally investing in a specific investment that you're going to end up with more money than what you put into it. So it's the investor's mindset. And so in difficult times, unfortunately, some people cut productive expenses because not all expenses are equal. If we treat them equal, it could be a very detrimental situation.
Yeah, we'll see that where they say they have to cut. They sit down to budget, right? Their first mindset is, what can I cut from my life? And they just cut whatever they can.
Budgeting sucks.
It does.
Budgeting sucks. That's the technical.
Every time I've done it, I realize that all I get to cut are the things I like.
I spent one day when I was living in that apartment, 10 hours. I spent the whole day looking at what we could cut and eliminate. And what I did was I just found myself more sensitive and frustrated when our heating bill was higher than I thought it should be, or when our gas bill was like, I just started paying attention, and I would get angry and I'd get frustrated, and then I would tell my wife, we need to spend less money, and she'd be like, well, I need to buy these books for school. I'm like, you should be getting paid to do this, not paying to do this. Like, I was an a-hole. I didn't just have this insight, but when I had it, I was like, yeah, I'm being a total a-hole. So, like, that's my problem with it, is no one shrinks away to wealth. And if we really get into that mindset where it's all about budgeting and eliminating and cutting, then we can actually cut out our very capacity to produce, to serve, to solve problems, and to be more abundant, where innovation and ingenuity lives, where value creation is king rather than scarcity. Like, people that are so scarce, like I've got these people in my family, these are the people that go to Black Friday and they're the ones you hear about on the news knocking people over and trampling them because they're going to get a 12 cent per dollar discount on some nonsense that we're not even going to care about later. I mean, every time I try to go cheap, it costs me, right?
Yes.
Like, there's a bench sitting outside of this office right now because I bought it off Walmart.com. And I was afraid that I would die because I was stepping on it one day and it was flexing down so much. I'm like, why don't I just spend twice as much and live, right? I went to Black Friday once in my life, and this is what happened. I went to the Walmart on Black Friday. One of the worst experiences, because first of all, we got up at like 3 a.m. to go there, stupid. Second, had to wait in this massive line to buy a CD player. That's how long ago this was, folks, a CD player. It was a Westinghouse or some brand like that. This thing broke within a week. My spirit broke the minute I went into Black Friday and I considered suicide. But then when that broke, I thought, how stupid that I went through so much effort just to save. Now, we want to be mindful with our cash management. We don't want to be wasteful. We don't want to allow destructive expenses to take over. But the reality is, what if we spend that time and energy on producing more, on increasing our skill set, on solving the freaking world problems, because the bigger the problem, the bigger the payoff. And there's a lot of money to be made because of these stupid ass problems everywhere. So anyway, that's my rant. Back to you.
Understanding the 4 types of expenses allows us to do.
It's like Simon says, if you don't say absolutely, we don't allow you to go.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Understanding the 4 types of expenses allows us to do values-based spending instead of budgeting.
Right.
And we get to put a value towards each dollar. Is it a destructive dollar? Is it a lifestyle dollar? Is it a protective dollar? Is it a productive dollar? And now you get to choose which dollars to allocate where based on the value it creates in your life. No judgment from other people and your neighbors saying, oh, well, you hired a housekeeper, so I'm going to judge you because you're not cleaning your own house. When in reality,
judge me very, very nicely. That was smart.
Because in reality, if that frees up your wife and you and whoever else in your family to be more productive or spend more time with each other and build relationships that matter, that was a productive expense, not anything else. And so I remember the first time I saw just a crazy high grocery budget on an expense sheet, and I immediately judged that client. And I try and eat like grass-fed organic beef and organic produce and those things, so I have kind of a high budget myself. This one was extremely high, and I was like, hey, tell me about your grocery budget with my judgment involved. He had a very strict, very healthy diet he followed. It required a huge amount of meal prep time, and he found that if he spent the meal prep time in his business, he far outproduced the cost of hiring a personal chef to create the meals for him, kind of like what you've done in the past as well. And it was a totally productive expense to have that high grocery budget.
Yeah.
But my judgment was like, oh, you're spending too much, you should stop.
Yeah, full disclosure here, on my personal side of things, my mom is actually my bookkeeper and controller. So she gets to see how I spend my money. And it used to be years ago that every now and again, her and my dad would say something like, you know that there's really good wines that don't cost over $100, right? I'm like, your taste for boxed wine's not the same taste I have for wine, you know? Or like, what is this? I'm like, they don't even ask anymore, right? They don't even, it does like, I'm like, look, this is part of enjoying life along the way. As Benjamin Franklin said, wealth isn't just the man that has it, but the man that lives it. And so as long as I'm, being responsible, paying myself first, I only have one loan. That's my mortgage. And I could pay off the mortgage if I chose to. I just choose not to because I'm earning a higher interest rate very safely than that loan's costing me. And we're not going to stay there forever because once our kids are out of school, we might move or we might just go live up at the cabin. It's only an hour away. And when I say cabin, it's nicer than my house. It's got logs, though. It does have logs.
It has logs. It's
so
a
we
very
can
nice
call
cabin.
it a cabin. It is on the water. So anyway, this is the 4 types of expenses. You want to eliminate destructive. You want to manage lifestyle. You want to address the protective. And you want to increase within reason the productive, right? If you put in so much that it's no longer productive, it then flips around and becomes destructive. So you have to be mindful about it. Mindful cash management, focus mostly on production and be mindful about your expenses. Don't let them rule you. Don't let them destroy you. Don't let them take away your joy. This is Garrett Gunderson. It's time for personal finance to be personal to you. We're here to make it simpler. We're here to help you to build wealth, capture wealth, and take back control of your finances so you can build the life that you love.
Absolutely.